Hello everyone and welcome to the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast reviews Lucha Underground. This week, of course, we're reviewing Season 2, Episode 20, named The Contenders, as we start looking for the landscape of Ultima Lucha here in Season 2. My name, of course, the host of this show every single week is Turbo Tony. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to listen to this episode of the podcast. And we're going to go through everything that happened this week. Of course, if you'd like to interact with us, the main way of doing so is our Facebook page, facebook.com/Let's Talk Wrestling Podcast. You can also tweet us at TalkWrestlePod is our Twitter handle. You can send us any audio questions or private emails to the email account, Let's Talk Wrestling Podcast @gmail.com. All of that stuff is in the description for you there. You can leave any questions for Lucha Underground or in wrestling in general, and they may be answered on the weekend episode of this show. So without further ado, as always, we don't have any time for any procrastination here on this show. Just like Lucha Underground, we get straight to it. So we start this week with Black Lotus, who we haven't seen that much of in this season, let's be honest, telling Dario Cueto about last week's scene that Azteca Jr. found Matanza last week. And we all know the story around about Dragon Azteca, the original, and him dying, and it seems to have had this ripple effect. She warns him, Black Lotus warns Dario, that if he did indeed lie to her about who killed her parents, then he'll have to answer to the entire Black Lotus triad. So it makes it seem as if Black Lotus, they kind of made it seem, over the course of this season, that Black Lotus, the only person that really she's got is Dario. But it looks like maybe she does have more to her, more ammunition, more arrows in her quiver than just Dario, right? She's got the Black Lotus triad as well. Now, Dario says, well, I've got no problems. I'm the only person that was telling you the truth, after all. Well, which, of course, we know that he's actually lying. He says, well, what's going to happen now is that you're going to face Dragon Azteca Jr. at Ultima Lucha. And that way you can defeat him and you can take his mask back to your triad for, a trophy of revenge. So that's the first match that we've got set up now for Ultima Lucha Dos, which is obviously number 2. And we haven't seen any matches with Black Lotus this season. We've barely seen much of her at all, really. The majority of the stuff with her has been kind of just doing her thing alongside Dario Cueto, which has been fine, of course. It hasn't been a problem. But it's going to be interesting to see her in the ring and with a guy that's been tearing it up. Dragon Azteca has made a very good first impact on me on this season in general. I don't think he's done much wrong. I don't think he's done a great job. Moving into the first match of the night, Marty the Moth versus Killshot, the rematch. Now, of course, Marty is doing his thing with Melissa Santos, doing his flapping. You've all seen it before, getting a little bit creepoid on her a little bit. He gets a little bit too touchy with Santos, so she decides, you know what, fuck this. Getting the hell out of Dodge, I'm out here. Don't exactly blame her. When you can beat one of the Wyatt family for the amount of sweat that's on your shirt, then that's not exactly a achievement that makes someone want to be around you too much. But still, he calls out Killshot, demanding that Killshot shows himself, and he's actually speaking to the dog tags that he stole from Killshot. And Killshot doesn't take long before he gets into the ring. Now, got to talk a little bit here, because I got a little bit of flack before on my thoughts about Killshot, that he hadn't exactly impressed me, and a few people disagreed, weren't exactly happy with how I kind of portrayed my thoughts on Killshot. It still hasn't changed, I'm not going to lie to you. People voicing their other opinions is great, but it doesn't change my own, right? So I'm just one of those guys who just hasn't, I've been a little bit underwhelmed by Killshot rather than hugely impressed. That's basically the entirety of it. Maybe my expectations for the guy were a lot higher than maybe they should have been. I will concede that. But overall, my thoughts haven't changed. And what happened this week didn't really change it either. They end up fighting for a little while on the outside, giving each other a bit of a battering. I'll admit that. But then obviously they they're counted out, so the match ends pretty much straight away. Now, I guess they're just setting up a feud for Ultima Lucha, like the actual match that will keep both these guys in. But I'm not really feeling this rivalry. To me, it comes across as a little bit forced, a little bit random, if anything, right? Because it just seems to come out of nowhere. I wasn't a big fan of the actual the video, the segment that had them started to verbally go back and forth. I didn't like the sound effects and sort of the cheesiness of it. So I kind of got started off on the wrong foot here. I can understand that some people obviously are, into it, but just not myself. And I don't expect myself to be into everything that Lucha Underground does. As overall as a show, I do like the majority of stuff that they do. I'm not going to like everything they do. So yeah, that's really basically it. Marty ends up escaping with the dog tags, and the fans were not pleased with it. Like I said, I've never doubted Killshot's ability. Clearly, he's got a lot of ability. He can do a lot of good stuff. But it's more along the lines of his storyline and what he's been involved in that's been a little bit lackluster for me, a little bit. But still, there we are. Mr. Cisco is in custody, and he's being interrogated by Cortez Castro, Joey Ryan, and their boss. I can't remember her name straight off. She rattles down a list of his felonies, but says, you know what, we can still use you because Dario Cueto trusts you. So what we want you to do is to wear a wire. And of course, initially, he initially just goes, no, bugger off, don't want to do that. But the idea of rotting in jail for the rest of his life, isn't that appeasing? She says to him, look, I know that Dario is not just a smuggler, he's not just a killer. He could be the linchpin for what she could only call the end of days. So obviously very cryptic. Don't exactly know what that means. Maybe she's referencing towards Matanza, maybe getting too power. I don't know. Or maybe this other figure that seems to be showing up every now and then with Councilman Delgado, right? That's another loose thread that you think is going to make some sort of impact at Ultima Lucha that will change drastically the beginning of Season 3. And I've always felt here that Mr. Cisco would end up an unfortunate victim of this whole situation, right? That he's being swallowed up by the bigger players around him. And he's going to be one of these unfortunate casualties of this war that seems to be coming. Drago and Aerostar versus PJ Black and Jack Evans in the first ever nunchuck match. So nunchucks are all around several positions around the outside of the ring. Some of them are quite high up. Some of them you have to go up the ramp. I think one of them was above Dario Cueto's office, so you can obviously imagine the sort of spots that they're going for here. Drago and Aerostar are some of the guys that haven't played as big of a role this season, so I'm quite glad to see them back. Whenever I see Drago's entrance gear alone, that's just awesome. That's just some of the most bonkers, crazy, over the top entrance gear, but it just works, and it's so much fun to see. And in the ring, he's no scrub. He could definitely do his work inside the ring. I thought this was a decent match. One of the things that I appreciated, maybe more from a technical standpoint, is that it's very hard to organise the chaos of a tornado tag match because there's a lot of action going on at the same time. There was parts where you've got you got two guys fighting at one location, you've got the other two guys fighting in a different location. It even just from a technical standpoint, it must have been extremely hard just to film that match and to edit it to the points that you needed it to show the moments that you wanted. So I think they did a good enough job there on that front. It's always going to be hard, but I think they did well. Evans and Black are the first to get the nunchucks, and they certainly weren't holding back with using them. They got some hefty strikes in. Now, of course, I don't know if these nunchucks are actually the words that the commentators were stating, but regardless, they were getting some contact there. They end up fighting into the crowd. I like the camera shot they have, actually. It was just up above where they can actually look down. You can look down from everything and see all the guys fighting from the crowd, so you can see everyone parting from there. So there's a cool moment here, actually. Well, I quite liked it here. Drago gets his hand on a nunchuck, and he's just, going about it. He looks like he's a proper, like, they brought up the comparison to Bruce Lee, with the nunchucks. He looked like he knew what he was doing there. He looked like he at very least, he'd been practicing a little bit. He looked quite badass. The very idea of a guy looking like a dragon with nunchucks, that's a guy I wouldn't want to mess with personally, but still. There was another cool moment here where they've got Jack Evans. He's hanging precariously off the edge of Dario Cueto's office. And literally got Aerosol just whacking his hands trying to get him to drop down. He eventually lands on PJ Black, and then Aerosol looks around and goes, well, I'm not going to take the stairs down. I may as well just jump off. And he does. He just goes, fuck it, and I'll just jump off. The entire building popped for it. They loved it. It's one of those cool camera shots there where it almost looks like the entire building shaking, right, with everyone up on their feet and, getting really into it. So that was really cool. And it's cool. One of the cool things I liked about this as well in terms of visual, I want to talk a lot about the visual here, but as they're going up and around and they're fighting up at the top and they've got like this shot of like all the fans getting really into it, you can see that they've like put guys up on the upper tier, normally where the wrestlers would come out, but there seems to be like more there than usual. So it really looked like they tried to cram in people to the place, like a Fight Club trying to get every last nickel and dime, just cramming people in even if there isn't seats, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. Kind of added to the visual of it all. Drago hits the green mist on Evans. He then hits the whip of the dragon's tail, which I can only call as one of the sexiest pinfall moves I have seen in a very, very long time. It looks gorgeous. It really does. He gets the pinfall and wins. So pins the Trios, two-thirds of the Trios champions at very least. I thought this was a fun match. Quite entertaining. Obviously, they've been benefited from a little bit of the extra time left over from what would have been the starting match of the night with Marty Nemoth and Killshot ending straight away. But I think they did very good with the time that they had, and just entertaining all round. Had a good time, and it certainly seems like the guys in attendance were enjoying it as well. So, good stuff. So we come to the main event then. Prince Puma, the Mac, Tejano, Sexy Star, Son of Havoc, and Mysterio versus Phoenix, Ivelisse, King Cuerno, Taya, Johnny Mundo, and Chavo Guerrero. Now, obviously, the commentary team at the start of the show had explained, unlike myself, that they need a contender for Matanza. Matanza's just been wrecking through people, right? No matter who they've put up against Matanza, he's been able to dispatch them, right? He's been able to get rid of them. He hasn't even come even close to losing that. Maybe the closest was that Graver Consequences match. But even then, he doesn't look like he can be beat. He looks unstoppable. In which case, you could kind of say that he's kind of like the best champion in pro wrestling at the moment, because he comes across like this guy who just can't be stopped. He hasn't lost a single match yet. He's undefeated since he made his debut at Ultima Lucha. Aztec Warfare 2. So, I mean, he comes across like a badass, and that's because he is. He's just he's not beating scrubs, right? He's not beating Chavo Guerrero every week. He's beating established talent, which are former world champions, all world champions, in terms of Phoenix when he beat him. Aztec Warfare when he claimed the championship there, right? So it's he's been on a tear, so they need to find a new contender. So basically, I'm guessing whoever wins this match, they'll take the winning side. Next week they'll have a 6-person match all against each other, or like a 6-pack match. Whoever wins that will become the number 1 contender and will face Matanza at Ultima Lucha. And I do think that Ultima Lucha is only literally I think they're going for 25 episodes, and if that counts, I don't know whether they're going to do this because they did this last year, that Ultima Lucha technically is 2 episodes, right? Because they do like a 1-hour first episode, and the finale is like the 2-hour episode. So it might be episode 24 and 25 all in one. So we've only got like 3 episodes to go to build that up. So, and I had been saying before that I did think that you're going to start seeing the landscape and things start change towards Ultima Lucha. It kind of feels weird that we're kind of ramping up towards the end here. So as they all come out, Chavo Guerrero's last, but behind him is Pentagon Jr., who obviously had his back broken, Batman style, against Matanza. He's coming out in a wheelchair and he says, look, Chavo, you're the only one who helped and supported me, and thank you very much for doing so. We never actually saw Chavo helping him, but still, we'll take him at his word. However, he stands up. Obviously, now we saw in one of the segments that Vampiro at very least got him back up on his feet. And Pentagon says, well, now, unfortunately, I'm going to destroy you, despite all that. And he does. He attacks Chavo, breaks his arm as a sacrifice to his master, of course, which leaves, obviously, a slot free. You can kind of see where this is going, right? Leaves a slot free in the match itself. Dario Cueto comes out and says, well, you know what? I've always been one to give the fans what they want, so do you guys, do the believers, do you want Pentagon in the match? And of course, you can expect the response. He gets a rapturous reaction. So in a sense here, you had Pentagon pulling a Chavo on Chavo, right? Chavo did the same thing, kind of, to get his name in the Gift of the Gods Championship match. So in a manner of speaking, you know, he can't exactly be too annoyed at it, because Pentagon just played one of Chavo's old tricks on him. So still, Pentagon, obviously, he's huge over, right? He's one of the fan favourites of Lucha Underground. Everyone loves him, and he's kind of like this mini redemption story that they've kind of built up for him. If there's someone that I wanted to say that they're building up to face Matanza, it would be him. I think that's what the match at Ultima Lucha is going to become. I think that's the one that kind of makes the most sense at this point anyway. But let's get into this match anyway. So, what I liked about this match, in general, one is because they had some interesting moments here. Like, you had Son of Havoc wrestling Evilise, considering their history on the show, and commentary explaining that as they wrestle. But one of the other things that I really liked is just the way that the match was set up. You've got 12 guys in there. And normally what Lucha Underground would do, and this is quite fun, but they do it quite often, is that they go uber chaotic. They go mega chaotic to the point that you've got people diving here, there, everywhere. So much so that there's so much action on that you can barely even make sense of it sometimes. You've got people flying all over the place. And it's almost like you're struggling to keep track of everything that's going on. What they did in this match is that they deliberately slowed the pace down a little bit to that point. And they allowed almost every guy in this match to have at least a couple of moments where they could showcase what they could do. So instead of just having a massive clusterfuck, they slowed the pace down just a little bit, and they allowed, you know, some of these guys wrestling one-on-one to show us some of their skill set and to have a little bit of exposure on their abilities and what they can bring to the table. So I really enjoyed that, because that way you're giving some moments to these guys rather than just having this massive clusterfuck of moves and no one really seems to make a lasting impact. So I actually really enjoyed this match. I really enjoyed it because of that fact, because they chose to kind of give more spotlight to individual moments, and then obviously towards the end they went chaotic as you'd expect, but at very least they gave time, at least 1 or 2 minutes, to every single guy in there. And when you're talking 12 people, that's quite an achievement there. That's pretty good. So I give them props for that. And because of that, you end up seeing some great action, you know, from these guys. There's a cool moment here where it boils down to Pentagon Jr. and the Mac just trading chops on each other. I thought for a moment they were going to do that, you know, the very Japanese spot of just, I hit you, you hit me, until exhaustion happens, which I'm a bit of a sucker for, I must admit. But the Mac ends up launching himself out of the ring. I'm still so impressed by this guy that he can do stuff that guys that are 150 pounds would be doing, right? And he's like, you know, he's close to 300 pounds, and he's so athletic. It's ridiculous. You look at some of the big guys out there now of his ilk. You're looking at the Cage, right? You're looking at Mac. You're looking at Big E in WWE. You're looking at these guys. You know, back in the day, they would have been told, okay, well, you're a big guy, so you do the big guy moves, you do the big guy moveset. I like nowadays that these guys are testing the very boundaries of what their athleticism can do. And there's something special about seeing a guy of the max build just fly, right? And not just fly haphazardly, he's completely in control, right? There's something really fun about that. And I know I've said it before, but I just want to reiterate it because every time you see it, it seems surreal, but it's awesome. So Mysterio hits the 619 on Johnny Mundo, but Mundo manages to push Mysterio into Puma, who was getting set up for the 630. So again, these guys not exactly working on the same page, which is what I think will lead to something eventually. Mundo hits his... they had a name for it, but I missed it here on the show. But it's like his backflip rock bottom. You used to see Paul Burchill back in the day with his pirate gimmick using that finisher. Now Johnny Mundo's doing it. He does that off the top rope on Puma, gets the victory for his team. So now it's that team, which includes Pentagon Jr., who I do think will go on and move on into that match next week. That will crown the new number one contender for Matanza to get that title shot. What I was alluding to there with Mysterio and Puma, this isn't the first time, if you remember, that they haven't exactly meshed properly and they've lost matches because they haven't been on the same page. And a lot of talk, even among some of the fans, is that Puma's started to be showing a little bit more of an arrogant side. He started to get a little bit more pissed off at things, right? Angry at times. So maybe eventually he looks at Mysterio and says, look, like, this isn't working. Like, you know, I keep losing these matches because we're working together as a team. Maybe I don't want to be a team anymore. Maybe I want to try doing something else instead. How about I wrestle you at Ultima Lucha so I can make a point and I can make a statement? And the idea of having Mysterio versus Puma kind of comes off like a badass dream match for Ultima Lucha and give these guys a match that I know both of them would love to do, and it would be very interesting to see. So I think all in all, I think that's where they're going with it. And if that is the case, I'm more than happy to do it. Because you can't go back with the team and make them go for the Trios Championships again, because obviously Dragon Azteca Jr. has his match and his storyline that he's moving into now. So Mysterio versus Puma, that certainly seems like it is the next logical step to go. And that's entertaining to me. That's something I would be interested in seeing. So fair play, and that's great stuff. So to end the show, we get a small little scene here. Katrina is in King Cuerno's abode with all of the trophies that he's managed to grab over the case of his time in Lucha Underground, and before then, of course. She resurrects the fallen Mil Muertes, who looks all the more demonic with his red eyes and his mask stitched back together. He kind of looked a little bit to me almost like Frankenstein-esque, that he's been resuscitated, but, you know, he's torn, you know, his body's beaten and bruised, right? So he's kind of, you know, he's been brought back, but he's not exactly what he was before. And that could be a little bit of an interesting take on Mil Muertes, that him being beaten and being taken out has kind of taken away a lot of his own ego or anything of his own thoughts. He ends up becoming more of a body that Katrina can order at her will, right? Whereas we saw moments in this season where Katrina would say something and Mil wouldn't like it. In fact, at one point he grabbed her by the throat, right? And obviously she Undertakered out of it. But maybe that's something that they go with here. Maybe this was they could even say that it was a plan by Katrina, so eventually her top guy wouldn't leave and start rebelling against her this way, that he's just this drone that she can send forward. And some people may dislike that idea, but the reason I like that idea is because Mil Muertes is scariest when he's not saying anything, right? In fact, when he opened his mouth and did a few promos this year, it actually kind of took away from the allure of the guy. So him being more quiet and being more just this, almost like this golem of a guy that just takes his orders and dishes out beatings on command, may end up coming across a lot more scarier than maybe what he was doing before. And it'd be different, right? So there is that. So all in all this week, a solid show. I think you had two very good matches. Like I said, I think the nunchuck match benefited from the first match not going very long. I am looking forward to Killshot down the line impressing me, because I think maybe they're saving some of his better work for the Ultima Lucha match that I believe he will have with Marty the Moth. But I think there's other people actually in Lucha Underground that I think that kill shot would work better with than a Marty the Moth, right? Not saying they won't put on a good match. I think they will, but it's one of those things there where there's a few other guys even in that main event that I'd like to see him go up against. I think he could do some good stuff with, right? But Ultima Lucha itself is starting to take hold. I'm sure that's going to that kill shot and Marty the Moth match will be on the card. You've got that championship match on the card. You've got the Dragon Azteca one. And I am pretty sure that Mysterio and Puma will be put on there as well. So it's shaping up to be something quite good, quite interesting. So I'm quite happy with that. All right then, guys, if you did enjoy this episode, please leave a like. It helps us a lot. Leave any of your comments in the comment section below, including questions and thoughts and comments. Great stuff. Love hearing back from you guys. We have been getting some great responses from the Lucha Underground episodes. So obviously we're really happy to continue doing them. And, it's great stuff to be able to speak about this show. Very happy about this show in general. Of course, if you'd like to subscribe, if you're a new listener to this show, then hit the subscribe button. You can catch these Lucha Underground episodes and weekly episodes where we cover all things pro wrestling, news, trivia, and we review every segment of Raw. We give fan feedback. That's where we give a lot of talk there. Just a lot of fun, and obviously that's there with my co-host. A lot of good stuff there. We have other projects down the line that we're working on that we'll be very excited to show you when it gets to that point. But thank you very much, guys, for listening this week, and I look forward to speaking to you again. Have a great week, and bye-bye.